Your brain is lying to you. Right now. Every single day. It's making you stay in bad relationships, waste money on things you don't need, make terrible decisions, and feel worse about your life than you should. And the worst part? You don't even realize it's happening. These aren't random mistakes. They're cognitive biases, systematic errors in thinking that are hardwired into your brain. They evolved to help our ancestors survive, but in the modern world, they're sabotaging your life. Today, I'm going to reveal 5 cognitive biases that are ruining your decisions, your relationships, and your happiness. More importantly, I'll show you how to recognize them and overcome them. Let's dive in. The first bias is called the sunk cost fallacy, and it keeps you trapped in situations you should have left a long time ago. Here's how it works. You've already invested time, money, or effort into something, so you keep investing more, even when it's clearly not working, because you don't want to waste what you've already put in. You stay in a relationship that's making you miserable because you've already been together for 3 years. You keep watching a terrible movie because you're already an hour in. You stick with a college major you hate because you've already taken 2 years of classes. The psychology behind this is powerful. Your brain hates loss. It feels the pain of wasted resources more strongly than it values future gains. So you throw good money after bad, hoping to justify the investment you've already made. But here's the truth. The time, money, and effort you've already spent, that's gone. It's in the past. You can't get it back by continuing to invest in something that isn't working. The only thing that matters is, does this serve my future? Let's say you've spent 2 years in a career that makes you miserable. The sunk cost fallacy says, I've already invested 2 years. I can't quit now. But rational thinking says, do I want to be miserable for the next 30 years just to justify the last 2? Here's how to overcome it. When making decisions, ignore what you've already invested. Ask yourself, if I were starting from 0 today, would I choose this? If the answer is no, it's time to cut your losses and move on. Your past investments are gone. Don't let them dictate your future. The second bias is negativity bias, and it's why you remember insults for years, but forget compliments by the next day. Your brain is wired to focus on negative experiences more intensely than positive ones. One criticism can erase 10 compliments. One bad interaction can ruin an otherwise perfect day. One mistake can overshadow dozens of successes. Why does your brain do this? Evolution. For your ancestors, noticing the positive things, a beautiful sunset, a delicious meal, was nice. But noticing the negative things, a predator, a poisonous plant, a dangerous person, kept them alive. So your brain evolved to prioritize threats, to remember dangers, to focus on what could go wrong. The problem is, we're not living in the wild anymore. That coworker who was rude to you isn't a life-threatening danger. That embarrassing thing you said 3 years ago isn't going to kill you. But your brain treats them like they are. This ruins your life in subtle ways. You focus on your failures and ignore your successes. You dwell on negative interactions and forget the positive ones. You see the world as more dangerous and hostile than it actually is. Research shows it takes about 5 positive experiences to counterbalance 1 negative one. That's how strong this bias is. So how do you overcome it? First, practice gratitude. Actively notice and write down positive things that happen each day. This forces your brain to pay attention to the good, not just the bad. Second, put negative experiences in perspective. Ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? Usually, the answer is no. Third, challenge catastrophic thinking. When something bad happens, your brain wants to spiral. This is terrible. Everything is ruined. Stop and ask, is this actually true, or is my negativity bias exaggerating? Your brain is programmed to see threats everywhere. Don't let it convince you the world is worse than it actually is. The third bias is one we touched on in our first video, The Dunning-Kruger Effect. Here's the paradox. The less you know about something, the more confident you are. And the more you actually know, the less confident you feel. Why? Because when you're incompetent, you don't know enough to realize how much you don't know. You see a few YouTube videos and think you're an expert. You read one article and believe you understand the whole subject. But as you gain real expertise, you start to see the complexity, the nuance, the edge cases. You realize how much more there is to learn. So you become more humble, more cautious, more aware of your limitations. This ruins your life in two ways. First, it makes you overconfident in areas where you're actually incompetent. You make terrible decisions because you think you know more than you do. You argue with actual experts because you don't realize the depth of their knowledge. Second, it creates imposter syndrome when you're actually competent. You've learned enough to see how much you don't know, so you feel like a fraud. Meanwhile, less competent people are confidently moving forward. Studies show this effect in almost every domain. In one study, students who scored in the bottom 12% on a logic test thought they scored in the top 62%. They were so incompetent that they couldn't even recognize their own incompetence. So how do you overcome this? Practice intellectual humility. Always assume there's more to learn. When you feel very confident about something, pause and ask, what might I be missing? What do I not know that I don't know? Seek out experts and actually listen to them. If someone has spent 20 years studying something, they probably know more than your 2 hours of Googling. And when you feel like an imposter, remember, that feeling might actually be a sign that you're competent enough to recognize the complexity. The people who feel like frauds are often the ones who aren't. The truly incompetent rarely doubt themselves. If you're doubting yourself, you're probably further along than you think. The fourth bias is called fundamental attribution error, and it's destroying your relationships without you realizing it. Here's how it works. When other people do something wrong, you judge them by their actions and assume it reflects their character. But when you do something wrong, you judge yourself by your intentions and blame the circumstances. Someone cuts you off in traffic. What a jerk! They're a terrible, selfish person. You cut someone off in traffic. I'm late for an important meeting. I didn't see them. I'm having a bad day. Your coworker misses a deadline. They're lazy and irresponsible. You miss a deadline. I was overwhelmed. I had too much on my plate. It was unavoidable. See the pattern? You give yourself the benefit of the doubt. You consider your context, your intentions, your circumstances. But you judge others purely on their actions, assuming those actions reveal their true character. This ruins relationships because it creates a double standard. You're compassionate with yourself, but harsh with others. You see yourself as complex and nuanced, but you see other people as simple and one-dimensional. The truth is, everyone is dealing with things you can't see. Everyone has context, pressures, struggles, and bad days. That person who was rude to you, maybe they just got terrible news. That coworker who seems lazy, maybe they're dealing with a family crisis. That driver who cut you off, maybe they're rushing to the hospital. You don't know. And neither do they when you make a mistake. So how do you overcome this? Extend to others the same compassion you extend to yourself. When someone does something that frustrates you, pause and ask, what circumstances might explain this? What might be going on in their life that I can't see? Assume good intentions until proven otherwise. Most people aren't trying to be difficult. They're just trying to get through their day, just like you. And remember, the way you judge others is probably how they're judging you when you make mistakes. Treat people the way you want to be treated when you're having a bad day. The fifth and final bias is the availability heuristic, and it's making you afraid of the wrong things. Here's how it works. You judge how common or likely something is based on how easily you can think of examples. If something comes to mind quickly, your brain assumes it must be common. You see news coverage of a plane crash, and suddenly flying feels terrifying, even though you're far more likely to die in a car accident on the way to the airport. You hear about a shark attack, and you're scared to swim in the ocean, even though you're more likely to be killed by a falling coconut. You read about a celebrity getting a rare disease, and you convince yourself you have the same symptoms, even though the actual odds are 1 in a million. Why does your brain do this? Because vivid, emotional, recent events are easier to remember. Plane crashes make the news. Car accidents don't. Shark attacks are dramatic. Coconuts falling are boring. So your brain uses availability as a shortcut. If I can easily think of examples, it must happen a lot. But this creates a completely distorted view of reality. You become afraid of rare, dramatic dangers while ignoring common, mundane ones. You overestimate the likelihood of terrorism, murder, and kidnapping, while underestimating the risks of heart disease, car accidents, and preventable illnesses. This ruins your decision-making. You make choices based on fear, not facts. You avoid flying, but don't wear your seatbelt. You worry about stranger danger, but don't worry about unhealthy habits that will actually kill you. So how do you overcome this? Look at the data, not the headlines. When you feel afraid of something, ask, what are the actual statistics? How likely is this really? Recognize that the news is designed to grab your attention, not give you an accurate picture of the world. Dramatic, rare events get covered. Common, boring realities don't. And remember, your feelings about risk are not the same as actual risk. Just because something feels scary doesn't mean it's likely. Your brain is trying to protect you, but it's protecting you from the wrong things. So there you have it, 5 cognitive biases that are secretly ruining your life. The sunk cost fallacy keeps you trapped in bad situations. Negativity bias makes you focus on the bad and ignore the good. The Dunning-Kruger Effect makes you overconfident when you're wrong and insecure when you're right. Fundamental attribution error destroys your relationships with double standards, and the availability heuristic makes you afraid of the wrong things. But here's the good news, your brain isn't broken. These biases exist because they helped your ancestors survive. They're features, not bugs. The problem is, the world has changed faster than your brain has evolved. What kept your ancestors alive 100,000 years ago doesn't serve you in the modern world. The solution isn't to fight your brain, it's to understand it. Now that you know these biases exist, you can catch them in action. You can pause, recognize the bias, and choose a different response. Awareness is the first step. You can't fix what you can't see. Which of these 5 biases do you struggle with the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this helpful, hit that subscribe button, because we're going to keep diving deep into the psychology of how your mind works, and how to make it work better for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.